Before we go too far, I'd like to make a short statement, though, and that is, it's an honor for me to be here today, and I'm not quite sure my friend Chief Johnny had in mind when he lined this up. But, you know, it's a difficult duty that we face today, paying tribute to those who were killed in the cause of freedom. They died and we live. They are forever lost to us, yet we enjoy a great gift from them. Recently, I came across a short poem written by an unknown author that is somewhat relevant. And I'd like to read that. I've played a lot of roles in life. I've met a lot of men. I've done a lot of things I think I wouldn't do again. And though I'm young, I'm old enough to know someday I'll die, and to think about what lies beyond, beside whom I would lie. Perhaps it doesn't matter much. Still, if I had a choice, I'd want a grave among soldiers when at last death quells my voice. I'm sick of the ferocity that lectures of the wise. I'll take the man with the flaws who goes, though scared, and dies. The troops I knew were commonplace. They didn't want the war. They fought because their fathers and their fathers had before. They cursed and killed and wept. God knows they're easy to deride. But marry me with men like these. They faced the guns and died. It's funny when you think of it, the way we got along. We'd come from different worlds to live in one where no one belongs. I didn't even like them all, and I'm sure they would all agree. Yet I would give my life for them. I know some did for me. So bury me with soldiers, please, though much maligned they be. Yes, bury me with soldiers, for I miss their company. We'll not soon see their lives again. We've had our fill of war, but bury me with men like them till someone else does more.
Thank you. That was a very nice poem. So back to the war. You were a sergeant or a master technical sergeant at the time of Pearl Harbor?
I was a 20-year-old sergeant in charge of the communications for a machine gun group. The 1st Defense Battalion had 5-inch coast artillery, 3-inch anti-aircraft guns, no radar, but we had sound locators and searchlights. Our ammunition was across the Honolulu or Pearl Harbor at Lululei. So when the Japanese attacked, all we had was small arms ammunition.
Wow. So in December, on that morning at about 7 a.m., where were you?
I was asleep.
And you woke up and you ran outside, and what did you see?
I heard this noise. I got up and got dressed, went outside, saw these planes flying with red balls on them. I could hear the bombs dropping on Pearl Harbor. Our barracks was about 1,000 yards from number 10 dry dock. The Japanese were dropping their torpedoes and bombs on the ships and then coming back and strafing the general area. I went back in and got my World War I rifle, my World War I hat, my World War I gas mask, my World War I cartridge belt. I went outside and got down to the gun shed to get some ammunition.
Wow, amazing. So, and I know how many men were lost that day?
Well, there were over 3,000 personnel at Pearl Harbor who died that day. My job with the machine gun group was to install communications between pre-designated gun emplacements. And doing that, I was at the Naval Hospital where they were bringing in the dead bodies from the harbor and stacking them up like cordwood. It was a really terrible sight. Now, in peacetime, people in Hawaii as uniforms wore short sleeve shirts and shorts. And of course, when the bombs went off, breaking up the ships, the harbor broke up with oil, burning oil, and most of the deaths, or many of the deaths, were caused by people burned. And of course, after that, we started wearing long sleeve shirts and trousers.
Okay, so after Pearl Harbor, and you were Field Commission Second Lieutenant right before that, or was?
One of the things about wars is that it brings about rapid promotions. The Marine Corps had 17,000 people when I enlisted in '39, and it grew to 500,000. That meant that they had to have seasoned NCOs and seasoned officers. I was able to go from private to master sergeant in less than 3 years because of the expansion, and was commissioned a second lieutenant in the field in 1942. Promotions were rapid during the time, but I can tell you, I made captain very fast, but I was a captain for a long time.
Okay, so after Pearl Harbor, your next major campaign was Okinawa?
No, for me, in late December, they loaded up the rest of the 1st Defense Battalion, and we went to Palmyra, an island about 900 miles southwest of Pearl. While there, we operated an airfield that was part of the ferry route of the planes going to Australia. In October 1942, after I'd been commissioned, one day I lived in the barracks as a master sergeant, next day as a second lieutenant in a dugout as the commanding officer of a 40 millimeter battery that no one knew anything about. We just arrived. So the Marine Corps, in its wisdom, sent me to Pearl Harbor to learn fire control. After I completed the fire control school, the Marine Corps said, gee, we need a communications officer on Midway. So out to Midway to be a communications officer. I was there for a while and then finally returned to the States for 13 months of TAD, going to school. Then I joined the 1st Marine Division on Pavuvu in the Russell Islands just after the Peleliu campaign. Peleliu was a very dirty, bad campaign with heavy casualties. It came back to Pavuvu to rehab and get ready for Okinawa. We landed in Okinawa on 1 April 1945. And the USS San Francisco was part of the force that was helping us make an unopposed landing. Mm-hmm. While it was an unopposed landing, we had the kamikazes who were raining all over us. Bad news.
Just for a second, as I understand it, was it hundreds of them that kamikaze pilots that were sacrificing their lives to wreak havoc and destroy all of you, the ships and the men on the ground?
That is correct. I was on a communications command ship that had antennas all over it. And if you ever try to dig a foxhole on a steel deck, it's hard to do. We were so glad to get off of that ship and get ashore.
Wow. So I understand Okinawa was a horrific experience, as war is. At the end of that battle, there's some things that people don't know. Were you not part of a task force that was preparing for the actual invasion of Japan?
Well, the at the end of the war, when the atomic bomb had been dropped, the Japanese surrendered. Prior to that time, we were preparing to make a landing in Japan. We theoretically rehabilitated on Okinawa. In October, we loaded up, and instead of going to Japan, we went to North China, where we repatriated the Japanese troops. The 1st Marine Division went to North China, the 6th Marine Division went to South China.
Okay, 1 second. The repatriating is that you accepted their weapons, that you disarmed them?
The Japanese were the absolute perfect prisoners. They had all of their weapons inventoried in warehouses and turned the keys over to us as we arrived. They also ran the infrastructure of the coast of China. And when they turned it over to the nationalist Chinese, the infrastructure went to pieces for a while. No surprise.
Okay, and then from there, you ended up in China and actually witnessed or were involved with the Red Chinese Army when it and had Chiang Kai-shek and the Nationalist Chinese Army surrendered?
We were headquartered at Petaho Beach, just south of the Manchurian border. And the Communist 8th Youth Army came out of Manchuria to fight Chiang Kai-shek's Nationalist Army. The Chinese Nationalist Army did not put up too much of an opposition.
Okay.
But it was an interesting experience.
So he went to China many, many years later, and it was the night before, he was at Tiananmen Square the night before the tanks rolled in. So we told him, stop going to China. Bad things happen.
You know,
So now,
enough of this.
when you, after the war,